do I say? What do I use? I want to get this out of the way first.
Just say Your Highness.
Ah! Hi everybody, welcome to the Charcha-cast. My name is Nick Novak here at the U.S. Consulate in Mumbai, and joining me today, Nidhi Goyal, a disability and gender rights activist, and she is also India's first female disabled comedian, if I said that correctly this time. Nidhi, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much, Nick, for having me here.
It's a real pleasure to have you. It's a real honor. I'm wondering first off if you can introduce yourself a little bit to the people who are watching.
I'm just wondering what's going to get the attention.
Whatever you think.
I thought I'd really start by saying I'm a single woman, but then I thought maybe not.
Okay.
No, so I'm a disability and gender rights activist, as you really mentioned, and I'm a comedian as well, but really working at the intersections of disability, gender, sexuality, violence. I run my own nonprofit called Rising Flame, which is based in Mumbai, and we work with women and youth with disabilities. But I'd really like to say that I am more not just an activist. For fun, it's like single woman, Indian, etc., etc. Depends on where you are and which feathers you want to ruffle. But really, I look at myself as a dreamer, believer, doer, and by profession, a researcher, writer, trainer, activist, campaigner.
It's a lovely description. I'd kind of like to start, though. I want to talk stories because people love stories, and I love a good story. But some ground rules first. And one thing we always run into is what do we call things, right? And I don't know, is it disabled? Is it visually impaired? Is it, what do I say? What do I use? I want to get this out of the way first.
Just say Your Highness.
Ah!
No, just joking, since I thought I was empowered to tell you what I want to be called.
But I got to tell you, I think you could have said that. If you said that with a straight face, I would probably do it, right?
That's the power I have. But anyway, I said I'm a disability rights activist.
Okay.
So the word disabled is absolutely fine.
Okay.
A person with a disability is absolutely fine. A woman with a disability is how I identify, and I call myself blind. So that's really, really not a problem.
Okay, good. That's a great starting point. So
Fantastic.
I think you have had some amazing TEDx talks, which I've watched and are pretty great, and I hope we can put a link to it as well. But I want to get to sort of what you're famous for, what you're known for, which is comedy. And I'm curious, how do you start in the comedy world? Like, is there a spark? Did you wake up one day and say, I'm going to be a stand-up comedian?
No.
What was that journey to become a comic?
I still wouldn't say I'm a very, very famous comic the way you're putting it, but I think it was a very spontaneous thing. I don't think it was a planned wake up, an aha moment, etc. It was really a friend and a senior activist who sat down with me and was listening to some of the stories that I had. Like you, she's also interested in stories, and so I was narrating some stories which were really cracking her up, and she said, wait, the way you're saying it, the stories that you have are really the stories of a stand-up comic. And that's how I started.
So tell me about the first time you did stand-up comedy. I feel that would be a terrifying moment to be on stage and there's silence, and then it's go, be funny.
I think that's the thing. You said be funny, and that was really the point. Being funny in a personal conversation in a group of 4, in a group of 10, is different from sitting in front of an audience of like 400 people, right? I did not have a stage fear. I've always been speaking on stage, performing on stage, dancing, theater, all of those. So stage was not the problem. My problem was the loop of feedback, because when you perform other things or you're speaking, you only get feedback at the end. You could, for all you know, you could suck at what you were doing. But people get a chance to make you feel you were horrible only at the end. And I was like, what if I crack my first joke and nobody laughs?
Right.
I think that was what was scaring me the most. So for me, it was really, cracking that first joke and getting a response. And then I was like, I've got this.
Cool. I love it. I think it's a wonderful way to explore issues. But I think when it comes to disability rights and disability rights activism, and you describe yourself as an activist first and foremost,
Right.
Comedy seems like a little bit of an unusual sort of outlet for that.
I think I was tired being angry.
Huh. Okay. Right on.
That's one way of looking at it. But I think for me, what was happening, Nick, was that there were so many things that were happening around me, which were weird, right? I mean, something as basic as when I walk into the room, and if you were to walk with me, I mean, besides the fact that you're a man and you have a race advantage in a racist world. But otherwise, also the natural authority was given to the non-disabled person walking next to me. So much so that they would come with a glass of water and say, would she want water? Right? And, there were just so many such stories, and I found it really, really hilarious. But I also thought, somebody needs to sit down the non-disabled people and say you're trying to act weird or funny or whatever it is that you're doing. And I thought, comedy might be a great space where they're laughing and cringing all at once.
So you like to make people uncomfortable, I think you said.
I end up doing that. That's not my aim.
But why do people get uncomfortable?
Because we're used to a certain norm. We're used to things being a certain way, and we have a limited understanding of things. We're not generally open to going beyond what we think is normal, right? And I think it's not normal in many, many societies, even today, not just in India, but all over the world, to have someone disabled being independent, being the decision maker, speaking. Like, it's not normal in many, many societies and cultures to have a woman leading something, right? So I think it's really what's normal in that space, and what you're exposed to and what you really want to get exposed to. So we're sitting in our comfort zone, having very typical ideas about who gets to lead, or who's in power, or who takes the decision, who's the boss. So when we say boss, we have an imagery that pops up in our minds of this man in a suit sitting behind a desk, right? And so that imagery becomes the comfort zone, and we're shifting the imagery. And I think that's the problem.
So let's talk about that a little bit then, because this sort of touches on the idea of, I don't like using the word infantilization necessarily, but I think...
Oh, that's the word.
I think thematically it's probably in the right ballpark. Right. That my sense is disabled people are often treated in a way that is infantilizing, that is like they're a small child.
Absolutely.
And I'm curious, how does that experience reflect on you?
Now people stop doing that because I know I'm a comedian. But I think in general, the whole idea is that you wouldn't know what you want, right? Or we could tell you what to do. So something from basic as, are you hungry? Somebody else should decide. But also in terms of what you should do with your life and what's okay to ask for. All of that falls in the bucket of infantilization. It's very similar to what we do to women in culturally conservative contexts. So when a woman has to decide her career, she consults with the family, and then the parents tell her what really works. If she wants to have fun, they're like, oh, you can have fun, but you can have fun to this limit, because beyond this, it's unsafe. If she wants to make certain friends or decisions in her life, some decisions are left to her, but others not. So I think it's very similar, but much more intensified in the lives of people with disabilities. And I'll give you one example, right? I mean, besides what I've already been giving you, it's really at a conference or in a wedding or wherever else, right? There's a spread of a buffet. Besides the fact that they would ask you what I would like to eat, if I open my mouth and I say, can I have just these 3 things? Can I have a salad? And no, I don't eat salad, sorry.
Anything healthy.
Nothing healthy for me. No, so can I have dal, rice, and a papad? When the plate comes to me, it comes with 6 more items, and I'd be like, but I didn't ask for this. They're like, but they were looking nice, please have. And if I make a fuss, the others are like, they're really trying to help you. Why are you creating such a fuss about it, right? So we automatically assume this authority of we should also decide what they would like to eat from something as basic as this. And this is the authority that is assumed by people who don't even know me closely, right? And so imagine the level of control and authority that automatically me being disabled, me as in people with disabilities, in their lives, people who are close to them, their friends, their families, etc. get. So this is one of the simple examples, but a more complicated social example that I'd like to give you is, and which I've spoken in so many places, but I think it's really, really important, is, have you heard of the film Margaret with a Straw?
No.
Yeah, okay. So this is a film made by an Indian filmmaker, inspired by a woman living with cerebral palsy, an activist as well. And so not really on her life, but inspired by her life, right? And so this film is about a young woman living with cerebral palsy who's a wheelchair user, who's exploring her own sexuality. I mean, all of Bollywood is that, right? First of all, it's really binary, so it's man and woman. It's really the hero and the heroine. But what else are they doing? They're exploring sexuality, romance, etc., etc. But here's this young teenage disabled woman. And so there was a backlash on that. There was an article written by an actress from India who said she wrote an open letter which was published by a mainstream publication. My problem is not so much that she wrote it. My problem was that it got published. And she says that, excuse me, and she takes the name of the filmmaker and says, I'm so sorry, but if there were 10 things that disabled people wanted, sex wouldn't be the 10th as well.
Wait, what? Really?
And I was like, wow, because you get to decide what we really want.
She was a disabled actress?
She was a non-disabled actress.
So sort of projecting what so she thinks she's standing up for
people with disabilities,
rights.
And this is a very humiliating film for people with disabilities because it's portraying us as desperate. And I was like, but then all of Bollywood is desperate, but we never term it like that. Huh. But it's also, projecting, and that's a great word that you picked up, because when you infantilize someone, you're starting a series of things. You're deciding for them, so they're not deciding. You're speaking for them, so their voice is not allowed to exist. And in a sense, you're invisibilizing them because you stand there and they're nowhere. So, ripple effect.
You also talk about, and I'm trying to remember where I saw you talk about this, but this idea that when non-disabled people see disabled people, it's through like 3 prisms. And one of which is, let's do it as it's a social service opportunity.
Absolutely.
I'm going to help someone across the street and feel good about myself. I think you gave the example of I'm going to go feed 20 kids or something on my birthday.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So talk about that a little bit, and again, what that sort of feels like from your point of view.
Sorry. So I think what that brings me to is really this, I don't know about 3 prisms, because we touched on one of them is infantilizing, but the 2 ends that I'd like to put this in is really that disabled people are incapable and depressed and defective, or they are these superheroes, right? And, you could have superhero characters that are disabled, that's fine, but in general in life, I can be one of the 2, right? So when I am inferior, I am less, I'm defective, or I'm depressed, the automatic normal is you, right? I'm not targeting you, but generally the automatic normal is the non-disabled person who could then really, really help this poor person, right? So we're framing it in the lens of a lot of pity, a lot of charity, and we've somehow not moved away from it, We've not moved away from, these are disabled human beings or people with disabilities, and so they have their own sets of rights. We need to create an enabling environment. We come from the space of, let's do something for them, for these poor people. And the best thing is, and gets into so much of joke in our community, I have a lot of disabled friends as well. And so one of my blind friends was just standing and waiting for me one of the days, and I was slightly late. I was 10 minutes late, and he was waiting on the street. Somebody just grabbed his hand and made him cross the street. And he said, wait, and the person wouldn't listen. It's like, no, I can help you. And he kept saying that and helping him cross the street. He reached the other side and he said, done? Now can you put me back there? Because my friend's going to come pick me up.
But you're right, this is what we do. If there's a blind person on the street, then clearly this person is waiting for someone to take them across the street.
But it's also very complicated, right? Because we don't imagine that a blind person could just chill on the street like we do.
Yes.
We don't think those spaces belong to them. So it comes from many, many spaces of discomfort. They're like, what is this oddball doing here? Because they need help, right? So we need to rationalize it. The non-disabled people somehow feel this need to rationalize it within their limited universe. And I really call it a limited universe because you don't know how much fun exists in lives of people with disabilities. And again, very similar example, right? But I have to give this. So one of my disabled friends was meeting me at a restaurant, and again, he reached early. I'm not painting a very good picture of myself. No, I do reach in time, but he'd reached early. And so he kept giving me detailed instructions of, okay, when you enter the restaurant, come in that section, walk straight on the left corner table. I'm sitting there, and I'm like, calm down. And he's like, did you hear what I was saying? I said, no. He said, why? He got really pissed. He was like, I'm trying to tell you, I know you're super independent, but I'm just trying to be helpful. I said, calm down. As soon as I reach the restaurant, they'll get me to you. I reached the restaurant. They said, Madam, sir's waiting for so long. I never mind if he was on a separate date and I was on a separate date. I mean, we would be forced into a dating scenario. But really, so I really think the help comes from there. But the second piece is about, and when we make people inferior, going back to that, it's easy, right? Because then we rationalize people's existence. We're like, it's okay, they're less, they need our help. They can exist in society as less. The other thing is that we're now getting more and more uncomfortable because people with disabilities are living their lives, getting education, working. Some of them are our bosses. And you're like, wait, what's happening? So to make this second rationalization, you're like, this is so inspiring. So I think that whole thing of superhuman, inspiring, anything to say that they're not normal, they're either less or they're more.
So if I understand what you're saying, then it's a non-disabled person is sort of, we take that as the normal, and the default is to, look down or view as inferior. But when the non-disabled person ends up working for someone who's disabled.
Not just working, interacting.
Or interacting.
Things that we don't expect them to do, right?
Fine, right, yeah. Instead of that just being, okay, now I'm interacting with this person, it's surely they have triumphed and overcome this enormous obstacle to be in a place where they're able to do this. Wow, good for them.
Good for them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, thumbs up.
But you would argue that what it sounds like is that comes back to this whole normal, not normal construct.
It is that. It is that. It's really normal, not normal construct, because when you don't let me be like you, right? You don't accept saying, oh, she has a different life, but she has an interesting life, right? All of us have different sets of challenges in our lives, or levels of challenges. But we don't sit and, look at for non-disabled people and say, oh, that one's more inspiring because the challenges were more, this one's less inspiring. But inevitably, when it comes to persons with disabilities, that's how we look at it. Two things again. This really also comes from a space where once we say that this person's really strong and they triumph over everything, right? Like they're sort of able to battle everything and overcome everything, then the responsibility shifts from us. Then we don't have to make spaces accessible. We don't have to make systems accessible. We don't have to do anything because we're like, oh, this one's a champ. They'll just do it no matter what. And I'm like, why should it be no matter what? And so it's a very typical example that I give in most of my trainings or sensitization workshops that I do for non-disabled people, to say that if this workshop was on the 75th floor of a tower without an elevator, would you be there? And so I'm generally met with silence, like I'm meeting here. And then one person would say, I would try and come. And I'm like, that's another thing that I wouldn't be here if it was a 75th floor without an elevator. Because we see that as normal. We're like, oh, tall buildings should have elevator. It's sort of easier for non-disabled people to get to from place A to place B. But when you say, oh, there are 4 steps, can we have the ramp? And they're like, oh my God, now you want a ramp as well? Right? That's only because we don't see it as a normal mobility space.
But there has to be room at some point for heroes and for inspiration, right? I look at my own life and I have certain people who are heroes to me and who inspired me. And if there's an Iraq War veteran who lost their leg and I read a story that they ran a marathon, well, running a marathon is hard enough, and you typically need your legs to run a marathon. So if someone only has one leg and a prosthesis and then they run a marathon, that's inspiring. And I got to think that's inspiring to someone else with a prosthesis. So how do you differentiate, true heroism versus this sort of false heroism?
Correct. So I'm no one to say it's true or false, right? But my point is just that you don't call a disabled person inspiring because they exist.
Okay, that's
right?
fair.
And also, so one of my heroes, I have several in my life. One of my heroes is my brother, and he's blind as well. And he was sort of, I think, one of the first or only blind student to go to Wharton, or first, and India's, world's definitely first trader on the financial markets. So he sort of changed the history in the world, right? Yeah. By being the first ever blind trader. And I know the kind of barriers that were put in his path, right? And so understanding all of that, I'd be like, you're amazing. And I would have a sister who's also my hero, who's not disabled, right? So I don't think my heroism or the fact that I get inspired is based only on the disability, is what I'm trying to say. Contexts are really complicated. So if you look at somebody summiting Mount Everest is hard enough, right? And so you're also admiring them because they summited Mount Everest and they live with a disability, where you could slip at any point and there's this blind person who, who's really on the basis of instructions, because of their practice, is really putting one step ahead of the other, where also it's dangerous for many other mountaineers. So I think contextualizing and deepening it a little bit and also differentiating. So somebody came up to me at a conference and said, I know you hate the word inspiring. I said, I don't hate it. She said, but I still think you're inspiring. And I said, fair. To you, I'm glad I inspired you. And she said, no, you don't get it. There are many, many people who speak, but you're a very inspiring speaker. I said, that's fair. That's absolutely fine.
Right on. Okay, so I like this idea that I'm not inspiring because of my existence. The virtue of me being here doesn't mean anything in and of itself.
So just right. I mean, I walk into an office and I'm just opening the door and I enter and I say hello, and people are like, oh, we're so lucky to have people like you who are such inspirations. And I'm like, I just walked 3 steps with a white cane and said hello. How much of inspiration was out of me there?
Hey, I think anytime you hear the words people like you, there no, it's never going to be a good follow-on. So look, I'm curious, just from a practical and kind of an interest standpoint, you live in Mumbai.
Yes.
I live in Mumbai, and this city is hard enough to exist in and of itself. So what are maybe 5 things that are part of your daily life in Mumbai that non-disabled people might not think about?
5 things in Mumbai?
Yeah.
I think the taxis.
The taxis, okay.
They're really integral in my life because I think that's how I get from point A to point B, or the auto rickshaws, right? It's really that kind of public transport, that piece of public transport that I interact with on a daily basis.
Okay, so everyone is suspicious of the rickshaw drivers, right? Like notorious for shenanigans. How do you ensure you're on the right route?
I sit confidently and not like I'm suspicious of you. Where are you taking me? Oh my God, I'm panicking. I'm sitting. What are you going to do? It was 2 hours for me to reach from Malad to Bandra. It'll take me 15 minutes more if you decide your shenanigans.
Okay.
It's as simple as that, right? You also cut off where you're going to get frustrated. But the other thing is, technology has made life really, really easier. I wouldn't say just simple, but easier, right? I used an auto rickshaw where there was nothing else but my mental map to take me to places. So I think now complaining about it, most of the times my maps are also not on. I also think that the more you trust people, 90% of the times your trust is rewarded. So I think disability also teaches you this beautiful thing called trust. So when I hold someone's hand and walk, I have to trust that they won't make me bang me into things. And if they do, I'm like, hey, that's not how you guide me. Right? So I think that's one of the things. It's second, but I think I should put it on the top of my list because of the amount that I travel. I think the second place I interact with in Mumbai the most. My prepaid cabs have started auto-populating their field of where to. It's the Mumbai International Airport. Right, because I travel a lot for my work within the country and outside as well. So I interact a lot with the airport, and the airport is like a bittersweet spot for me. Sweet because it takes me to places, it takes me to my work destinations, it enables me to meet so many people, but also many a times really frustrating. And this is not just Mumbai, in particular airports all over the world could be frustrating because you're traveling, and again, travelers with a disability may or may not be considered with dignity. So I've had instances where ground staff has yelled at me and I'm like, what's your name? And they're like, I won't tell you. And I said, you're wearing a name tag. If I could see, I would be able to tell. And they're like, yeah, sure, but you can't see.
Seriously?
Yes. I've had those.
Seriously?
I've had those instances in India, but I've had instances where I was locked up in Germany in a lounge. So it's really not
They
about...
They locked you in a lounge in Germany?
They locked me in a lounge. They said, you're not allowed to get out because what if you get lost? And I'm like, but I need food. I have an 8 hours layover and I'm just back from a 13-hour flight and I have another 8 hours flight ahead. They're like, sorry. We'll neither assist you to get food, nor will we allow you. And so they kept my boarding pass and everything, and they wouldn't let me go out.
What the heck?
So, and this is up, this is online. I've spoken about it, and all of that has happened. So it's just, traveling can be such a pleasure, but I think a lot of people take the pleasure for granted when you're disabled you're ready for everything. You're just ready to be facing, sorry for my words, but shit at any point of your journey. But you're also sitting in these aircrafts where you're trying to press the call bells, and many a times the air hostess doesn't respond. And so for any non-disabled person, it would mean to get up and ask for water. For a disabled person, it would mean to sit in an 8-hour flight without water.
But I got to think that see, first you started off with humanity's good, right? Trust 90% of people, and then you're getting locked in a room at the airport in Frankfurt or something. So I'm all confused now.
But I've finished like a 60-page booklet of a passport in 4 years.
All
but
right.
I have like 20 instances to say. But I take like 45 trips a year. So
fair enough. But I got to think that people want to be helpful, right? Like if you're in the airplane next to somebody, you can't say, "Hey, will you call and get me for a glass of water?" Or does that feel like disempowering somehow?
It's definitely disempowering.
It is.
It's also crap, because I'm like, why should I? I'm 34 now. I've been traveling for like 7-8 years now, and I mean traveling for work intensively for 7-8 years. And when you're a frequent traveler, you know how important is that like 10 minutes sleep in the aircraft, and what if the person next to me is sleeping? I wouldn't want to do that, and I'm problematically independent. So for someone like me, it gets really, really, really hard to turn around to a passenger and be like, can I please ask you for help? I mean, I do ask for help. It's not like I'm proud and I won't ask for help even if I'm dying. But what I mean to say is I think it's very undignified to say, just take help. It's fine. If there's no air hostess or if there's no ground staff, just take someone's help. And I think technology, as much as can be enabling, I think we're not thinking through universality of designs. So the little touch screens that we all are very excited about in aircrafts, and when they place the call bell on the touch screen of their monitor, you really know that the next 12 hours are going to be hell.
This is really smart, what you're saying, because as I was sitting here listening to you talk about it's undignified to ask for help, and then you sort of transition to that's sort of a crutch or a panacea or a Band-Aid for the real problem, which is design, right? That you shouldn't have to turn and ask someone
Absolutely.
For help, because the button should be easy to access in the first place.
And they should be responsive.
Yeah. Well, hey, it's not. You're not the only one.
No, that's why I said you know about that.
Yeah, that's the universal thing. What else from daily life might people not think about?
People's interaction.
Okay.
So it's very interesting. Whenever I go to places, that people, you're the center of attention because you're still one of the few people, like visually and visibly disabled person in their space many a times. And so my sister often jokes about this, and she's like, whenever I hold your hand and I'm walking, I feel like there's a need to dress up and come out, not just come in my pajamas and t-shirt. And I'm like, why? It's like, everybody's looking at you.
Wow.
And generally it's okay because I'm okay with that, but it's like I inevitably come in the spotlight, and I'm not a people's person. I don't like to be in the spotlight. So these are the conversations I'm having, but at the same time it's also fun because I'm walking on the street and the street clears off. So some of my friends are like, hey, it's cool to walk with you because the street clears off. So I think that's one of the that experience with people is one of the things, but also because people want to be helpful. And of course this is a part of my stand-up, but I'll just share it here. And I still remember my first ever date in my early 20s. I landed on a date finally in my 20s. And so I proposed a restaurant which I was familiar with because I exactly did not want this sort of gawking and staring and things like that. And the guy agreed, and we went, and I don't think I really called it a date. We really didn't call it a date. We called it a catch-up or whatever else. But anyway, we were sitting, and the waiter got super helpful, right? And so my friend asked me, what would you like to eat? And before I could respond, the waiter said, ma'am really likes Mexican.
Ah.
And so I was really confused because I'm okay with Mexican food, but I don't really like Mexican that way. And, in my head, just out of teenage, I was like, Mexican men, Mexican food, and so my friend played along, and he said, oh, really? Ma'am likes Mexican, are you sure? And he's like, yes, sir, I can tell you because ma'am came here last night with another sir and ordered everything Mexican.
What? First of all, ma'am was here last night with another sir?
That's exactly what I'm saying. So So your privacy goes for a freaking toss.
Wow.
And you're sitting there and you're like, oh my God, I have to. Of course, he didn't ask for it, but I explained saying I was here with my cousin, which was true.
Wow.
So it's just, your privacy, your autonomy, all these are not just words, they're realities for people with disabilities. And the last thing of interacting with people, so instead of 5 things, I'll just say 3 things about interactions, right? And I think which is really, really serious, and we don't really give it the time and space that it deserves. In public places or otherwise, people do not think that you have bodily autonomy. And it seems like a really big word, but just to ask me before holding my hand is extremely important, right? We wouldn't turn around holding somebody else's hand just generally imagining that they need help. We don't even do that to kids. We should not if you're doing it.
Right, yeah.
But just to say that it's so important. It's a part of daily living for people with disabilities like me, all across the world, that people just grab them, hold them, touch their wheelchairs, grab their assistive devices, all with the idea of support, with the idea that they think they're supporting well. If you just paused and asked saying, how can I help you? Can I hold your hand? Or here's my elbow. And particularly when you're a woman with a disability, right? There are days when you're like, I don't want to touch anybody. Just go away, right? But also you're feeling really unsafe. This is a space where you're sensing danger, or you're not sort of feeling comfortable. What does it mean when then someone tries to lift you up and transfer you out of your wheelchair because the spaces are not accessible? It's really complicated. So if we just respected that kind of bodily autonomy and space and privacy and the ability to consent, and because we don't respect this in daily life, the problem is, Nick, that then it's just a step away from respecting to abuse, and we don't understand how fine that line can be.
Wow.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we'll have to leave it there on a pretty powerful thought. But I do want to thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a really wonderful few minutes I got to spend with you, and I wish we could do more of it. But anyways, my guest today, Nidhi Goyal, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
No, please go ahead.
No, just to share that there are lots more that, there's lots more to reflect on and to think about and to know. And it's not all serious. There are also stories and narratives and fun, etc. So just signing off, just leaving some coordinates to follow my work at Says Nidhi Goyal on Twitter, and my website of our organization, risingflame.org.
Perfect, great. I should have plugged that anyways. I'm sorry, that's terrible hosting on my part. And maybe we can have you back again soon and tell some more stories together.
Absolutely.
This has been the Charcha-cast for this week. I'm Nick Novak. We will see you next time.
Bye, Nick.